Hi there. Welcome to LSAT Demon Daily. I'm Josh Mansfield, a teacher with the Demon and the podcast producer. Joining me today is Demon team member and beloved teacher, Zoe. Zoe's here to tell her success story. Zoe, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Josh. I'm
So
happy to be here.
I'm so glad to have you. I want you to know, first and foremost, before we get started, my students all the time come to my class and they rave about how great your classes are.
Oh, that's so
They
kind.
love your classes. So I feel like we actually have a pretty big overlap of some of our students.
Yes.
So if I'm right about that, you've got great students, because I know my students are great too.
I have noticed this overlap as well. Someone in class, I think last Saturday, was talking about the classes changing, teachers having new class schedules. And they were just inquiring on if your and my classes would stay the same. And I was like, I do understand that you want consistency in your week. And I really appreciate this like grouping I'm in of like classes that are valued.
It feels great. It feels great.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad to have you on, Zoe. I know nothing about your LSAT journey. And so we're starting from scratch, and I'm super excited for everybody to hear that. So let's start first and foremost. What did you score on the LSAT?
I got a 170. Like the score I hold on record is a 170.
Is a 170. Okay, awesome. So let's start at the beginning then.
Yes.
Why law school?
Wow. In my like junior year of high school, I read the book Just Mercy. I was a speech and debate kid. I was really intense about everything. I had a background in history day, so I had gone to like compete at nationals with like a 10-minute performance piece about a history topic. And these things kind of coalesced when I was like, what do I want to be? You know, where do I want to go to college and what do I want to do there? My brother mails me this book and is like, this seems up your alley. And kind of prison reform becomes the career goal.
Okay.
And law school becomes an avenue that I'm interested in pursuing. So, fast forward to my junior and senior year of college, I am like obsessively adhering to my 4.0. And I am also kind of gearing up for a law school application. And I begin to realize that the situation for a K through JD is not what I thought it was. And that the JD that I'm after for environmental or immigration law or prison reform is a lot more fucking complicated than just like showing up in law school and saying, I'm here, I'm ready, like teach me. So I self-studied with the Khan Academy, platform with logic games while I was finishing up my last semester of college. And then I graduated a semester early. So I think I was just trying to gather together options for the next step. And I started studying for the LSAT. I started at a diagnostic of 157, and I didn't really know anyone who was taking the LSAT or knew how to approach the test. So I kind of came from a background that said, it's a test. You just buckle down, get ready for it, be a good test taker, stay calm. And so I took the official test way too early, right? I'm one of the demon teachers who, like, before coming to the demon, did it all the wrong ways.
Okay.
And I had to have people telling me, Zoe, applying right out of college does not make sense. I had a professor who I loved, creative writing English professor, who was just like, why? Why go straight into a JD? And I was like, because I don't want to teach. And everyone is putting me in those two categories. Like, oh, here you go to teach English or philosophy or
the LSAT.
Or the LSAT or law school. And I had worked in the corporate world. I worked all the way through college. So
what were you doing for work?
I started, okay, I'm from small town Kansas.
Okay.
I started teaching swim lessons when I was 12 years old at the public pool. Like taught private swim lessons when
Okay.
I was like 15. Left for college and got my insurance license. So in my small town I was like shift managing a pizzeria for 3 years. Moved to Kansas City, got my like customer insurance license, worked there for 6 months. I started tutoring in college pretty early on because I'm like from a big family. So trying to like teach people is in my blood a little bit. It's like I'm just trying to help all of the babies along as I figure out what the fuck is happening.
Okay. Yeah.
So I transitioned through a couple of serving jobs, and then I was living I graduated. I was living in New Hampshire taking care of my grandparents when I found the demon. My partner was studying for the nurse boards. So we
Mm.
both just graduated
NCLEX.
undergrad. The
Yeah.
NCLEX, yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes. Yes. Yes. Yes.
And we had our joint hour a day of study where we would either start the day or midday. We would like cut out the hour, sit down together, silence, and just like zone the fuck in. And that okay, so that period on like a date timeline, this is this the summer of 2024.
Okay.
God. Okay. I find the demon because it is the most affordable option on the market.
Okay. So real quick, you've taken an official test at this point.
I took an official test. I got a 164.
Okay. Okay. So some improvement from the 157,
My diagnostic, yes.
but not what was going to give you the JD that you wanted.
It's certainly not at the top of my capacity. I
Okay.
mean, I had learned enough at that point to know that I should be in the 170s before I was like done with the LSAT as part of the application process. So I did a month of live and 2 months of premium with the demon, and then took the test in New Hampshire and got a 170.
Okay.
And then I leaving the demon platform, like leaving my demon subscription, because I was like, okay, for now, I'm good with this. I was moving back to Kansas City. I was like, I'm not still really actively studying for this.
Mm-hmm.
There are life things that need to occur.
Sure. Sure.
As I was leaving the demon subscription, I think I just wrote like, listen to your demon teachers and make the test your bitch. I was just feeling pithy, I guess.
Okay.
And then I applied and got a job. Like I got an email back from Nate that was like, okay, do it then. I don't know. He was like, apply if you want to. And Matt was one of the first people who looked at me and said, Zoe, what are your other options? Why this path?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of maybe the first outside person who really just immediately challenged my timeline. And that really helped me slow down my need to have a next step.
Mm-hmm.
So the clarifying thing for me when people come to my class and talk to me about this test, like I went through the application process in that I gathered all of my materials. I did everything besides click submit and pay. And I said, I'm not paying for this and I'm not applying right now.
So you have all these application materials like sitting in.
I have letters of recommendation and a personal statement and the fucking resume. Sometimes like helping people with with a resume is my favorite thing because I spent, like a week just hyper fixated on all of these small details that they care about
Mm-hmm.
in making your resume a statement and a narrative piece in this like overall storyline. No, so my next steps right now, since becoming a teacher, I took the test again, and this is where I find my story students can appreciate this the most. Like,
Okay.
I scored a 169 on the next official test I took. And I got that score because I was like, yeah, 170 is awesome, but like 176 at least is what I'm going in with.
So this is after teaching with the demon? Like you're
Yeah.
working for the demon.
Yes.
Okay. So you're working for the demon. How long have you worked for the demon at this point?
I So I started teaching, tutoring, and ask button writing all at the same time
Okay.
in October of 24.
Okay.
And I took April.
You took April. Oh, okay. So like 2 months ago, 3 months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you got a 169.
I scored a 169 and I saw the score and I was like, oh. I'm having all these conversations with my students that's like, it was technically in my score band. And let me tell you that there was an RC passage that I sat there reading and rereading a single sentence over and over and over. And it was not going to come to me that day. And ooh, does that hurt? But also, it's just not that deep. It's a data point. So
Mm-hmm.
taking that, I had to kind of reappreciate the quality of my 170. The perfectionist in me was like, all right, girl, you still have a score that gives you access to the world of the LSAT, and that's enough of my niche for now.
I've always been like, maybe now that I've taught at the demon, I should go take the LSAT one more time just to see. And you have like thoroughly poured a bucket of cold water on me wanting to do that. Because now I'm like, okay, I'm happy with my score. That's probably not the lesson that we should be taking away from this. I can't. I'm like trying to picture myself in the student's shoes,
Right.
and that story must be so comforting.
I hope. When I like came to class the first day, because I had told students I was taking it.
Yeah, of course.
I took it
You're
from
in the trenches
home.
with them, right? Like, yeah,
Yes.
you're one of them.
I took it at home. Like, I had proctor issues. I was like, not a big deal. Fine, I'll reboot my computer. Yes, you can look around my bedroom 12 times. My partner's like making me a matcha halfway through. And I'm like, yeah, girl, I'm chilling. It's good. I finished and I felt great. I finished and I
Hmm.
was like, okay, I solved one question at a time the best I could. I did not finish I didn't finish all of my sections. My LR, I definitely went through a period even when I was teaching at the Demon where I really struggled with trick, must be true, and flaw answer choices.
Mm,
Like the ones that are designed for the student who's reading just a little too fast and
the
has a little
yeah.
too big of a head. Where you're sitting there and you're like, yeah, I know how to read and I just want to get through this.
Hmm.
And it's a must be true question that requires you to piece a puzzle together. I mean, it is demanding focus and attention and time that I was probably not giving it at that point. I still had things to learn about pace, difficulty, and frankly about the logic, the way that I like to engage with the common sense, which is imagination.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Yeah.
I feel like the hippy dippy teacher at the demon who's like, for the love of God, bring your creativity and imagination to this because it's the worst activity if you're just sitting there trying to word salad. Like
Hmm.
leaving the words on the page as just words on the page is really boring.
Well, and not only is it boring, it's so funny because when I tell students, hey, paraphrase this for me, they'll have a sentence that says something like, a failure to acknowledge the fact, and they'll go, oh, the author didn't acknowledge the details. I'm like, you would never say that. You never in a million years would say that, right?
Yeah,
That's not paraphrasing. And so I really appreciate this idea of like the imagination, the creativity. How do you get students outside of their box? Because, this one that I described, I tell them paraphrase, and they have a hard time removing those words off the page. So how do you
absolutely.
help them get out of that box to do that?
I find, you know what Matt first taught me when I was interviewing and like had to practice teaching a question was putting it in the student's world. So like when
Hmm.
I was modeling the student in our interview, I still remember the question because I he so simply put it into my world. It was like it was like financial distribution over a region that had three like subgroups, and
Okay.
they had these names that I was unfamiliar with, and I'm nervous, and so I'm kind of trying to understand this passage that seems more complicated than I'm really sure of, and I'm really trying to sort out what the details mean. And Matt just goes, "You're from Kansas." And there's like a central part of Kansas, and then there's like an eastern and a western part of Kansas. And if you were collecting taxes in Kansas by region and you just fucking divided the state in those three regions, can you see how the financial distribution would work like this? And I was like, well, yeah, that totally makes sense. I can totally think of it that way. So I think it's a little hard in a class setting instead of like one-on-one tutoring to engage with students in meaningful ways to say like how insert your perspective for all of us here now. I think
Hmm.
I have the hardest time bringing students out of their shells because I am not my preference is never really to be on Zoom. I did a lot of in-person tutoring and
Oh,
teaching
okay.
before entering like the Zoom sphere of
Hmm.
teaching and being taught. Like I was a college student during the Zoom classes.
Hmm.
And I think it's a different beast to be someone who's like alone in a room with a computer trying to understand how to engage with this test. And then there's like a teacher that you don't know, understand, or really even you can't even picture their personhood. And they're like, "Tell me this." And the student is tracking, but sometimes I feel like my job is just like, "Hey, let's coax out participation so we can talk about it." Because once you're talking about it, they're just ideas.
Right. Right.
They're just sentences. So I guess the most concrete response to your question is getting students to give concrete examples themselves, and that they feel welcome and good to do so in the space.
Yeah. Love that. You mentioned that when you started, you did all the wrong things, including timeline, taking the official test. What were the habits from previous study suggestions that you found the hardest to break, or maybe the most like important to break, and you saw the growth after you broke those habits?
Absolutely. Number one is shit review.
Okay.
I
The
was
importance or difficult?
the the difficulty of getting past
Okay.
doing really shitty review.
Okay.
So I didn't come in with many study strategies. I didn't highlight, I didn't diagram. Even when I did logic games, I was sort of doing worlds, but I wasn't around the demon sphere. So I didn't have like teachers helping me. Logic games was by far the section that I came in with the least understanding of how to capture the information I needed in the time I had.
Hmm.
So RCNLR, like I have an English, philosophy, and Spanish background. So I was pretty good at working with words carefully until I understood them. I read answer choices too fast. I didn't have a strategy or approach to answer choices, which is like my favorite thing to work with students on is eliminating answer choices one at a time.
Hmm.
Don't combine all of the ideas from the five answer choices in your brain, then try to figure out whether you can defend any of them with a passage. But I would be frustrated that I wasn't performing better faster. So I would, be working a hard question and kind of hit this frustration point and say, God, this is what I think it is. I'm going with my instinct. And it was probably a 50-50 that my instinct would be right. And I would be like, oh, I solved it. And then a 50% of the time it was wrong. And I was like, okay, I didn't solve it, but my review process did not look like understanding why every wrong answer is wrong and the right answer is right. And I could explain it to someone an hour after looking at the question.
Mm-hmm.
Those were all things I had to learn over time and with practice. I think I had to learn that timelines will always limit your ability to engage with the test the right way. Like you can't serve two masters. It's about accuracy. Solve the question in front of you. So I had to learn how to actually review in like a meaningful way and slow down in my expectation of how I was performing on the test.
That I think that's something that it's you highlight this idea of not serving two masters, the idea that a timeline will always reduce that pressure. I'm always struck by the cohesiveness of the demon philosophy,
Mm-hmm.
right? That if you have a timeline, the idea of taking as long as it takes to solve every question might feel like it doesn't make sense, right? The idea of spending as much time reviewing and not just cramming practice tests probably doesn't make sense. Like all of those things, it's not just about the test itself, but the application, when to sign up, when you're ready, what your scores look like. Like all of those things fit so neatly together.
Right.
And it's interesting to see how students have a hard time wrapping their head around one's concept when they don't accept another one.
Yes.
What is the most common mistake? And you might have already answered it there, but what's the most common mistake that you see your students making when they come to your classes?
There's some really good podcasts that have been made, through the demon and the many wise teachers who work here about slowing down, and what it means to actively read. I think students, for me, underestimate themselves, overestimate the difficulty of the test. And while they do that, they are unwilling, and I went through this too, they're unwilling to be frustrated and stuck, which I think is like what I feel responsible to train them to be comfortable with. If
Mm-hmm.
you want to be a lawyer, or I always kind of just run through like, if you want to be a lawyer, a judge, an activist, a lobbyist, a fucking teacher, a like writer, organizer, it is incredibly important that you realize that people without a lot of time wrote something down and they could have written any fucking thing. And these are the words they chose. So every word matters. And if you refuse to acknowledge that every word matters by saying, I can glean what I need from this sentence by just identifying every word on the page as a word instead of as an idea,
Mm-hmm.
you will not master the LSAT. You won't. I mean, you won't be able to capture what it means to anticipate, predict, and like internalize the ideas in order to analyze them. And it's really hard to like think of 15 ways to tell students to slow down without frustrating them, because there's always a student in class who's like, can you please tell me how to go faster?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That is my legitimate request to you, Zoe. And I sometimes go on a little bit of like a tirade. I'm like, you asked for my soapbox, and now class is going to run late because I have to tell you that you will never get where you want to go with that strategy.
Yeah. And not just with that strategy, with that attitude.
That
right?
mindset,
Yes.
that sense of discipline, like, oh, okay, my brother's a Marine, and we went through this phase where he was like really trying to convince me to like go to Marine officers candidate school. And I was like, I do not have any interest in that life for myself. When someone yells at me to physically push myself, I get I am never more angry, than when I finish a fucking marathon or half marathon or Tough Mudder with a family member and they're like, that was so fun. And I'm like, fuck you. I trained for like 3 hours a week, man, because I was also working and going to school. And and I think I bring this up in the analogy form of when people push you into something, it's clear, and a lot of
Mhm.
students have been pushed by their own expectations or someone else's expectations into a pretty manipulative field. A field that is ready to take advantage of your time, energy, money. Your work, your labor is
Mhm.
ready to be exploited in this field if you are not careful. So, like, why would you enter this field without a great idea of what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you're going to do it, and how you're going to get past all of the people who are going to try to like upend your beliefs about yourself in order to just like make you a worker bee or, you know, a miserable droid who's just like pumping out concisely edited reports,
Yeah. Yeah.
for your law school classes. I don't know. I don't.
No, that that makes a lot of sense. And I think you're right that and that is oftentimes reflected in that timeline process,
Yeah.
right? Students who have that idea with, like you talked about, the KJD, who've never had somebody say to them, well, why? Why
Right.
why why do you go next year? Why is that? Why do you need that? And they're like, well, that's just, I'm done with school, so I go to the next thing. Like,
Yeah.
I find that those students often are the ones who struggle to have the grasp of a
Absolutely.
good reason why they should be doing it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had this. Sorry, if we
Yo,
can.
please, please.
Okay. Okay. I had a good friend who I kind of like brought to the demon and was like, we were working. I worked at Trader Joe's for a stint in Kansas
Mhm.
City. And so we worked together at Trader Joe's, and she was studying for the LSAT with Seven Sage and maybe another like prep book. And I was like, let me just simplify this for you. You need one source of advice, and I'm not usually one to say like limit your intake, but like here is the philosophy you need.
Mhm.
You take it or leave it. And she started using the demon, and she was like, holy shit. And I was like, yeah, it's actually not that complicated. There are some basic things you need to know. And as I like as a teacher and tutor have engaged with people who are trying to change their minds but are scared to,
Mhm. Yeah.
I've had people cry or like truly express grief at losing this like concept of the next step. And I really understand that law school can feel like a valid next step. It can feel like a way to get into a job market or a career. But someone has to be the one to tell you like the job market's not going to look like what you think it's going to look like in three
Mhm.
years. You are going to have this amount of debt or this amount of just burnt out burden if you're going to work your way through law school and go to a shitty school where you're not top of class and have to fight for professors' attention. Like, who wants that education?
Right.
Not me.
Right.
I
Not me.
I'm ready to like go hang out with my professors. Like if I'm going to law school in the next 5 years, it's because I got into a school that I am like politically behind and who is ready to just allow me to pretty much start engaging in the work I would like to be doing, which it varies a lot, but yeah, there's a lot to say about prisons and and civil servants and lawyers. So it's just the field is not simple. It's not a simple
It is
job
not
market.
simple. It is not simple. Um, you said if you go to law school in the next 5 years,
Yes, yeah.
is that still up in the air then?
Yeah, law school is not my current plan. So I'm located out of Kansas City
Mm-hmm.
and I have been working like in and out of several industries around Kansas City, like getting ready to leave every
Mm-hmm.
time. I moved here for college and then thought that I would move south. Either for law school or for an internship. Like
Sure.
I didn't really imagine myself geographically staying in the Midwest. Um and then it was like COVID and the housing market and the I'm from a big family, so there's like I already have like six nieces who are growing up in front of me. And so the question of if I was gonna go somewhere for 3 years, would not be an easy or lightly undertaken choice. And I think there are plenty of things in my backyard that I would rather be doing than the world of law school because I do not vibe with the lawyer type in general. This is just generalization, but you know, I I already did the like super perfectionistic, intense, let's work my life away energy, and I didn't like it. It was not fun. So right now I'll apply to some philosophy PhDs and a couple programs around the country that I think will just put me in the fields I want to be in, and then when a JD makes sense for those fields, if immigration law can get anywhere back on track and I could like be on the southern border without worrying someone's just going to like I, I don't know, it gets really politically complicated. But there are things to be doing right now. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's activism to be done. There are jobs to be filled. Like there are political seats to be filled, and I'm putting my energy more in that realm than like law school right now.
Well, good for you. I thank you for all your time, Zoe, today. I think this was super insightful and very much as you kind of described, like a different path than we see for a lot of people, and I really appreciate being able to tell that story. The last thing I want to give you a chance to shout out, what class do you teach? When is it? If students want to
Okay.
come be join
Yes.
the infamous Zoe and come to your class.
I teach a Friday class at 2 p.m. Eastern time. It's called Into the LR Woods. So that's my LR weekly dose. And then I teach a Saturday class called RC Explorers, which anyone who like loathes RC, I'm always like doing these little pitches for RC to be everyone's favorite section because I just love learning this weird random shit that may or may not be relevant to me in my life, but it's fucking fascinating. And and then I just took over RC Foundations on Mondays. So the my Saturday class is like 4:30 Eastern time, and my Monday class is also 4:30 Eastern time. I'm in Central time, but I always have to translate everything to Eastern
Everyone
time
else, I know.
for the demon. But yeah,
Yep.
I'm on the dashboard. You can find my classes.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Zoe. Make sure to check out Zoe's classes. If you are a live member or a premium member, you can go back and watch those recordings. But otherwise, thank you so much, Zoe. Thanks for a wonderful story. If any of you listeners have a success story that you want to share, questions for Zoe, please email in at daily@lsatdemon.com. Thanks for listening.